Hello. This video is part of the Prayer of the Week series that we've been doing here at First United Methodist Church in Oak Ridge, just to kind of hopefully broaden your perspectives on forms of prayer that you might consider. Today I want to talk to you about silent prayer. This may be a very unique idea to you. It may not, but silent prayer is really one of the richest forms of prayer that can take place when our hearts are absolutely still and we are aware of the presence of God, not only in the world and the universe, but in our lives and our hearts. So that's the psalmist in Psalm 46 says, "Be still and know that I am God." And for many of us, that is one of the most powerful forms of prayer. Now, I want to make sure you understand prayers that rely on words are quite often the best form of prayer for many of us. But at the same time, we shouldn't strive so hard to find the right words or the right thoughts that we overlook that if our heart is saying to us, it's okay, I just need to be in silence right now. That is perfectly acceptable in terms of a form of prayer. And in those times, to be conscious of both, there's almost like there's two layers to our psyche. One layer that has a lot of words and thoughts swirling around, but at a deeper level, the desire to just know that we are not alone, to be united closely with God for a period of time. When you feel drawn to that kind of silent union with God, I would suggest you give it a shot. I would say this is a unique form of prayer that does take a few weeks to get into the habit of, to experience it for its fullness. So if you're going to try it, my suggestion would be to try it for a certain number of days, 5 or 6 days, that you say, I'm going to give this a shot every day for this length of time. And there's two different forms of silent prayer that I would suggest to you as a beginner. One is the prayer for inner quiet. You know that experience when you love somebody really deeply and you can just be with them, be in the room with them, even looking right at them. And it's comforting and it's challenging and you're just there. That's not a bad way to think about this form of silent prayer. You can begin with a short scripture passage if you want to. There are actually apps. I have an app on my phone that lets me set up a beginning sound so that you have a sound that kind of takes you into time of silence, and then you can set the duration for how long you want it to go, and then a closing sound that comes back out of it so that you have a sense of for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever length seems appropriate for you. I'll be honestly, I start with 3 or 4 minutes. If I have not done a silent prayer in a long time, just start with 3 or 4 minutes and see how it feels. And at the end of that experience, come back. Some people begin with scripture. Others find that once you have those words in your head, the scripture can almost be distracting. Pay attention when you do this form of prayer, or the other form, besides just inner quiet, would be the prayer of listening, where in the prayer of inner quiet, you're just trying to be with God, to be present, be aware of God's presence and God's love for you. There's also the prayer of listening, where instead of just being present, you are actively focusing on listening to what God might be saying, speaking to your heart. It's not that you're going to necessarily hear words, audible words, although some people have over the course of Christianity, but more about where do you feel God moving in your life. Pay attention to how difficult it is to silence your body, to silence your mind. Be aware. Don't let that hinder you. It just should spur you on to recognize that for many of us, silence is difficult to achieve. And if some thought pops into your head, don't beat yourself up over it. Just acknowledge it. Say, isn't that interesting? Another thought popped in my head. And then let it go. My suggestion is if you can start that process and work your way up to a 20 minutes or 30 minutes of sitting in silence, you've done really good work. And it's in those longer periods of time when you just sit and you quiet your body and you quiet your mind and you take a few deep breaths, and you can close your eyes or leave them open to look at something. Some people look at an icon. Just let the Spirit kind of lead you beyond the noisy level of the world and be present with God. Be present or listening, and just let the quiet love of God, the foundational experience of our lives and the creation, be present with you. Sit, relax, and be aware of God's presence. I encourage you to give it a shot and enjoy your experiences of silence with God.